Hello and welcome, guys. We have news for you. Jannik Sinner is the Indian Wells champion. Yes, you heard that right. He won 7-6, 7-6 against Daniil Medvedev on Sunday afternoon in the California desert. Came back from 0-4 down in the second set tiebreak to win 7 consecutive points and close out the title. And in doing so, ended the one chapter in his hardcourt story that had been missing. The final that everyone wanted never happened. Carlos Alcaraz was eliminated in the semifinals on Saturday night. This 16-match winning streak ended. His pursuit of a third consecutive Indian Wells title stopped by the same player, who then went out and lost the final to Sinner. Two of the most important results of the 2026 season happened in the same California desert within 24 hours. Sinner had lost in the Indian Wells semifinals twice before. In 2023 to Medvedev. In 2024 to Alcaraz. Both times he arrived in California as one of the best players in the world, and both times he went home without the title, his Indian Wells campaign ending one match short of the final in a way that accumulated across 2 years into a specific narrative about a tournament that simply would not yield to him the way other tournaments had. He had won the US Open. He had won the Australian Open twice. He had won Paris, Shanghai, Cincinnati, Canada, Miami. He had beaten the best players in the world at the biggest moments across 2 full seasons of exceptional tennis. And yet Indian Wells, the tournament in the California desert where the best hardcourt players in the world come in late winter to lay down a marker for the season ahead, had given him nothing but semifinal exits. This week changed that permanently. He arrived having dropped 0 sets across the Paris title run in November, and having prepared specifically for this tournament with an intensity that the people at Indian Wells noticed from his first practice session. He had been in California the week before the draw started, putting in training sessions that reporters covering the tournament described as among the most focused they had seen from any player across the full fortnight. He dismantled Zverev 6-1, 6-1 in the first round in 64 minutes. He beat Shapovalov 6-3, 6-2 in the second. He survived Fonseca 7-6, 7-6 in the third, a match whose scoreline concealed how close the 19-year-old came to taking the first set, and how thoroughly he tested Sinner in both tiebreaks. He destroyed Tien 6-1, 6-2 in the quarterfinals in 66 minutes. Then he faced Zverev in the semifinal, in the match that the draw had been building toward since the bracket was released. Zverev arrived as a genuinely dangerous opponent. He had reached the Indian Wells semifinals for the first time in his career, completing the full set of Masters 1000 semifinal appearances. He was playing more aggressively in 2026 than in any previous season of his career by his own description, had struck 102 winners across his 4 Indian Wells wins, and had nearly beaten Alcaraz at the Australian Open from a set down and 3-1 in the second. Sinner beat him 6-2, 6-4 in 68 minutes. It was not close in any meaningful sense. Sinner's return game produced break opportunities in the first and second games of the match, and the tone was set before Zverev had the chance to establish the aggressive rhythm he had maintained all week. The margin was the margin of a player at the absolute peak of his game against a player who had found something in 2026 but had not found enough to handle what Sinner brought to that specific afternoon. The match established its pattern within the first 2 games. Medvedev attacked immediately, winning the first 6 points on his serve before Sinner took the game, and began the exchange that would define every service game across the next 2 sets. Neither player was broken. Neither player offered the other a single clean breakpoint opportunity in the entire first set. Sinner served 91% of first serve points won across the match. Medvedev matched him in baseline precision, hitting clean and flat from both wings with the specific aggressive tempo that had undone Alcaraz 24 hours earlier. At 3-4 in the first set, Sinner called for the trainer to retape his right ankle, a detail that briefly introduced anxiety into a Stadium 1 crowd that was watching the two best hard-court players of the moment trade blows at the absolute limit of their capabilities. He returned, held serve, and the set continued on its course toward the tiebreak. The first tiebreak was decided by a single moment, and 5-4 to Sinner, Medvedev chose to leave a ball that dropped in. The misjudgment gave Sinner a set point on his serve. He closed it out on the second attempt, having netted a forehand at 6-5, with a serve that gave Medvedev no angle on the return. 60 minutes, 1 set, 0 breaks of serve. Both players walked to their chairs, knowing the second set would be identical in its demands. It was. The second set produced the same pattern of holds, the same quality of serving, and the same absence of breakpoint opportunities. Andre Agassi was watching from courtside, there to celebrate the 25th anniversary of his lone Indian Wells title. At 2-2, 30-0, Sinner hit a forehand down the line with such violence that Agassi put both hands to his head. The shot was not a winner in the conventional sense. It was something beyond that, a statement of intent from a player who knew the set was heading to another tiebreak and was already mentally in the moment where everything would be decided. Medvedev held to force it. The second tiebreak began. Medvedev moved to 4-0. The crowd that had been behind Sinner throughout turned briefly uncertain. 4 consecutive points in a tiebreak in a Masters 1000 final against a player who had won every match this tournament in straight sets is the kind of lead that most players convert. Medvedev had spent the full fortnight converting exactly these opportunities. He had done it against Alcaraz in the semi-final, stepping in and taking the tiebreak when the match was finally balanced. What happened next is what Indian Wells 2026 will be remembered for when the full story of this season is written. Sinner won 7 consecutive points. Not 6, not 5, 7. From 0-4 down, he won every point until the title was his. He did it through a combination of first-serve aggression, return depth that pushed Medvedev off the baseline into defensive positions, and the specific composure that 4 Grand Slam titles in 3 years has installed in him. So deeply that a 4-0 deficit in a final tiebreak produced no visible change in his body language or his shot selection. He pointed to his chest when it ended. He raised his arms to the stadium. Third time lucky, as he said afterwards, at the tournament where he had twice failed to reach the final. I knew that this was a tournament I haven't won, so I wanted to prepare in the best possible way, as professionally as possible. Having this achievement now means a lot to me. That statement, measured and precise even in a moment of genuine emotional weight, is the most complete expression of what the win meant to him. He did not say it was the greatest day of his career, or that the curse was finally lifted. He said he knew the tournament was one he had not won, and that he had prepared accordingly. The preparation included arriving in California the week before the draw began. The preparation included training sessions that the tournament's own reporters described as among the most intensive they had seen from any player across the entire fortnight. He came to Indian Wells specifically to fix the one gap in his hard-court record that 4 Grand Slams, 6 Masters 1000 titles, and the ATP Finals had not yet filled. The historical dimensions of the victory extend across 3 separate records that arrived simultaneously on Sunday afternoon. He became the 3rd player in history to win all 6 ATP Masters 1000 hard-court titles, joining Djokovic and Federer, a list so exclusive that only 2 other men in the sport's history can make the same claim. He became the youngest player to achieve that feat, doing it 6 years earlier than the previous record. He became the first player since the Masters 1000 series began in 1990 to win back-to-back Masters 1000 titles without dropping a single set, following his Paris title run in November. He did not drop a set at Indian Wells across 5 matches, a run that included the Fonseca semi-final that produced 2 tiebreaks of genuine quality and the Zverev semifinal in which he was at his most complete and dominant all week. Medvedev's role in how the week unfolded deserves its full accounting, because without understanding what he did on Saturday night, the Sinner Championship cannot be fully understood either. He walked onto Stadium 1 against Alcaraz as the 11th seed, the player the whole tournament had been trying to find for 2 weeks in the draw. Alcaraz was 16-0 for the season. He had passed Federer in career winning percentage. He had passed Djokovic and Laver on the outdoor hardcourt winning streak. He had 5 consecutive Indian Wells semifinals. He had beaten Medvedev in 6 of their 8 previous meetings, including both of the Indian Wells finals they had played in 2023 and 2024. He was the prohibitive favorite to reach the final and win a 3rd consecutive title in a city that had felt for 3 years like his own backyard. Medvedev had said in his press conference before the match that the faster courts and different balls at Indian Wells gave him an excellent opportunity to deliver his best against Alcaraz. It was not a hollow claim designed to generate headlines. It was a precise tactical assessment from a player who knows his own game and who had identified the specific conditions in which the gap between his flat, time-taking baseline style and Alcaraz's topspin aggression narrowed most significantly. He was right about the courts. He was right about the balls. He executed the game plan he had described. He broke Alcaraz in the 6th game of the first set, the only break of serve he needed, and held everything to close out 6-3. Alcaraz came out for the 2nd set and did what he had done multiple times in the tournament when opponents threatened to take control. He lifted. He went 3-1 up, creating the impression that the match was turning, and that the pattern that had defined his entire fortnight, finding another gear when the occasion required it, was reasserting itself. Medvedev did not give ground. He broke back at 4-4, held to force the tiebreak, and then won 6 consecutive points from 0-1 down, serving an ace on match point. The streak that had begun at the Australian Open in January ended on a Saturday night in the California desert. Alcaraz said he was disappointed, but that he had to see the good things. He had competed fully across the week. Medvedev had simply been better on the night. He had said he would be, and he had delivered. He was right. He had identified the specific conditions that suited his game, and he had executed. He then said something in his runner-up speech at the trophy ceremony that captured the specific dynamic of the week more precisely than anything a commentator offered. He congratulated Sinner, said the tennis had been amazing and tough to play against, and then said he was happy not to let Alcaraz play Sinner again at Indian Wells, adding that whenever they played each other, he loved to see it, and telling both of them to go for it and keep winning and never stop. He had beaten Alcaraz. He had lost to Sinner. He was the player who, in the space of 24 hours, ended one historic run and failed to prevent another. The last player to beat both Alcaraz and Sinner at the same tournament was Djokovic at the ATP Finals in 2023. Medvedev had that specific achievement within reach on Sunday and could not deliver it. What he delivered instead, by eliminating Alcaraz, was the open road that Sinner needed. The final everyone wanted was the one between the world number 1 and the world number 2. The final that was played was between Medvedev and Sinner won it with the same composure and the same refusal to be deflected from his own standards that has produced 4 Grand Slams, 6 Masters 1000 titles, and the complete hardcourt collection that joins him to Djokovic and Federer on a list that no other player in history has managed to reach. Alcaraz said afterward that he was a little bit disappointed, but that he had to see the good things about the loss. He acknowledged Medvedev had played incredible tennis. He said he had worked hard all week and was now going to work hard for Miami. He will arrive there still ranked world number 1, still 2,150 points ahead of Sinner, still with the Australian Open and Doha titles marking the opening chapters of his season. The streak is gone. The tournament is over. The clay season begins in 3 weeks, and every record and every ranking position is subject to revision. For Sinner, the immediate focus is Miami. He has not previously won the Sunshine Double, the back-to-back titles at Indian Wells and Miami that only Federer, Djokovic, and Agassi have ever managed. He said after the trophy ceremony that Miami was an important tournament and that he would try to play the best tennis possible there too. The understatement in that sentence, from a player who had just won Indian Wells on the back of a Paris title run with 0 sets dropped in both, is the specific kind of modesty that comes from a player operating at the top of a long career arc rather than at the peak of a short-form spike. He is 24 years old. He has now won everything there is to win on hard courts. He did not drop a set at Indian Wells. He came back from 0-4 in the final tiebreak to win 7 consecutive points and point to his chest when it was done. Third time lucky. Tell me in the comments whether you think Sinner completes the Sunshine Double in Miami, and what this title does to the Alcaraz and Sinner rivalry going into the clay season. There is a specific detail from the final that has not received the attention it deserves in the post-match coverage. Sinner won 91% of first-serve points across the match. He won 8 of 8 points at the net. He hit 10 aces. He produced 28 winners against a player who matched him in baseline pace and precision for the full 1 hour and 55 minutes. In a match where no service game was broken, where both players produced the kind of sustained hold percentage that hard-court finals at the elite level very rarely achieve across 2 complete sets. Sinner was marginally more precise in the 2 moments where everything was decided and margins of a single point determined the set. The first tiebreak came down to Medvedev leaving a ball that clipped the line. The second came down to Sinner finding his 7 consecutive points from 0-4 down when the match was at its furthest from his control. Those 2 moments, a misjudgment and a comeback, are the full width of the gap between the 2 players on Sunday. One of the most closely contested Masters 1000 finals in years was decided by points that required the most complete version of both players to produce, and the most composed version of one of them to close. The ranking implications add context to both results. Alcaraz leaves Indian Wells still ranked world number 1, still 2,150 points ahead of Sinner, still with the Australian Open and Doha titles building the foundation of his 2026 season. He lost 15 matches in a row before losing for the first time, which is a sentence that very few active players have been able to construct about themselves in recent years. The streak is over. The losing it will hurt for a day or two, as Djokovic said publicly before the tournament when asked about what ending a long unbeaten run feels like from the inside. Then it becomes the next match, and the next tournament, and the preparation for Miami that Alcaraz described immediately after the defeat. For Sinner, the Indian Wells title reduces the ranking gap and gives him the momentum of a completed hardcourt collection going into 3 Masters 1000 events he missed last year in Miami, Monte Carlo, and Madrid, all of which represent significant opportunities to close the points differential against the world number 1. Medvedev said something at the trophy ceremony that no previous Indian Wells finalist has said at the same occasion. He told Sinner and Alcaraz to go for it, to keep winning, and to never stop. He said he loved watching them play each other. He said he was happy to have stopped Alcaraz from getting a 3rd consecutive Indian Wells title. He said it without bitterness about losing the final he had earned with his semifinal performance. He said it as someone who has been on this court 3 times in a final, won none of them, and still understands that what he produced this week in California was among the best tennis of his career. That specific tone, generous, honest, accurate about both his own performance and the players who set the standard he was chasing, is the tone of a player who has made peace with what it means to compete at the top of a sport that is currently in the middle of the most exceptional 2-player era since Federer and Nadal were at their peak simultaneously. Tell me in the comments whether you think Sinner completes the Sunshine Double in Miami and what this title does to the Alcaraz and Sinner rivalry going into the clay season. What Indian Wells 2026 produced across its final weekend was the clearest possible statement of where men's tennis stands right now. Two players dominating the hard court landscape so thoroughly that when one of them falls, the other steps in immediately and wins the title. Alcaraz was eliminated on Saturday night, and the trophy on Sunday afternoon went to Sinner. The same tournament, the same week, the same standard, maintained by different hands. Djokovic said before Indian Wells that Alcaraz was so good he could win any tournament he entered. He was right about the quality and right about the caveat he attached to it. The body had to stay healthy and everything had to go right. On Saturday, it did not go right. Medvedev was better. On Sunday, Sinner was better than Medvedev. The logic of the best player in the draw winning the title held, as it almost always does. It just produced a different champion from the one the whole fortnight had been pointing toward. Sinner is that champion. He pointed to his chest. Third time lucky. He was right about that too. There is one final thread worth adding before the Indian Wells chapter closes entirely. The Sinner win on Sunday made him the first Italian man to record 100 Masters 1000 match wins. He did it in the way he has done almost everything in his career, quietly, without announcement, as a byproduct of competing at the highest level for long enough that the numbers accumulate into milestones that only become visible in retrospect. 100 Masters 1000 wins for an Italian player had never been achieved before he got there. He did not mention it in his post-match press conference. He said he was happy, that the team had worked hard, that Miami was next. Then he went to congratulate Kimi Antonelli, the young Italian Formula One driver who had won the Chinese Grand Prix earlier the same day, saying it had been a special day for Italy. A 24-year-old Italian winning the Indian Wells title and a 20-year-old Italian winning a Formula One Grand Prix in the same afternoon is the kind of day a country remembers. For tennis specifically, it is the kind of day that marks the precise moment when a record that seemed permanent became history, and the player who replaced it did so with composure, conviction, and 7 consecutive points in a final tiebreak.